The name Caravaggio was famous for his dark and dramatic paintings full of emotion and controversy. He was also known for his violent and hot-tempered personality. But what people don't realize is that he also had a dark and painful past, which may have shaped both his art and character. Born as Michelangelo Merisi in 1571 in Milan, he was the first child of Fermo Merisi, a master stoneman, household administrator, and architect for Francesco Sforza. His mother, Lucia Auratori, came from a respected family of landowners and had connections with local nobility. In the year 1576, a deadly plague hit Milan, and the family had to flee to their hometown, a small town called Caravaggio. Unfortunately, the plague reached them and it took the lives of Michelangelo's father, grandfather, and his uncle, leaving only Michelangelo, his mother, and his siblings behind. There are no historical records of how the family's financial situation after his father's death. However, since Michelangelo's mother came from a wealthy landowning family, it is likely that her relatives supported her and the children during that time. But when Michelangelo's mother died in 1584, he and his siblings were left without any financial support. He was 13 at that time. That same year, Michelangelo moved to Milan and began an apprenticeship with Simone Peterzano, a respected painter in Milan, and was a former student of the great artist Titian. Like many young artists at the time, he was taught the basic drawing, painting techniques, color mixing, and studying the art of classical and Renaissance masters. However, Michelangelo didn't seem very interested in copying traditional style. Instead, he was interested in something raw, real, and emotionally intense, a mindset that may have clashed with Peterzano's classic ideals. After completing his 4-year apprenticeship in 1588, there are no records about what Michelangelo did next. However, historians believe he probably stayed in Milan or traveled a bit around northern Italy, working as an assistant and studying other painters to develop his own style. It was until 1592 that Caravaggio decided to move to Rome to seek more opportunities. At that time, Rome was the center of the art, especially after the Counter-Reformation. That was also when people started calling him Caravaggio instead of Michelangelo, because it was common to revere someone by their hometown. This also helped to avoid confusion with Michelangelo Buonarroti, the famous Renaissance master before him. When Caravaggio arrived in Rome, he struggled quite a bit, as he had little money and no connections. The city was full of talented artists, all competing for commissions, making it hard for him to get noticed. At first, Caravaggio stayed with Pandolfo Pucci, a clergyman who offered him food and shelter in exchange for paintings. However, they didn't get along, and Caravaggio left soon after. He wandered around Rome and stayed in shared lodgings with other struggling artists. It is said that he took various small jobs to survive, like painting fruit baskets, flowers, and background figures in other painters' works. However, his fate changed in 1595 when the influential art collector Cardinal del Monte saw Caravaggio's painting Boy with a Basket of Fruit and was impressed by his talent. Through the Cardinal, Caravaggio got the chance to meet the wealthy patrons like the Contarelli family and Cardinal Scipione Borghese. During this time, Caravaggio created some of his most famous paintings like The Musicians, Bacchus, The Head of Medusa, The Calling of Saint Matthew, and The Fortune Teller. Thanks to these works, Caravaggio quickly became one of the most famous painters in Rome. Although Caravaggio was appreciated for his art, people couldn't ignore his difficult personality. He was known for having a bad temper and often got into fights and arguments, including his fellow artists and patrons. In the year 1606, Caravaggio got into a violent fight with Ranuccio Tomassoni, and the fight ended with Caravaggio accidentally killing him. Realizing he had committed a great crime, he quickly fled Rome and never returned. When the news about Tomassoni's death came out, the Roman court declared Caravaggio guilty of murder, and he was officially made an outlaw. meaning anyone could legally kill him and be rewarded for it. After leaving Rome, Caravaggio moved around southern Italy. He first went to Naples, where he was protected by the colonial family. In 1607, he fled to Malta, hoping to become a Knight of the Order of St. John to gain a papal pardon for his crime. However, due to his violent temper, he got into another violent fight with his fellow knight. In 1608, he escaped to Sicily to avoid the Knights of Malta. During this time, his paintings become darker, lonelier, and more intense. Some important works from this period are the Burial of St. Lucy, the Adoration of the Shepherds, and the Rising of Lazarus. After almost a year in Sicily, Caravaggio returned to Naples. Sadly, during this period, Caravaggio was attacked by his rivals. His face was disfigured, and the injuries affected his health afterwards. While recovering, Caravaggio created his last two paintings, The Denial of St. Peter and The Martyrdom of St. Ursula. At the same time, Caravaggio was trying to negotiate a pardon for his crime with one of his former patrons, Cardinal Scipione Borghese, who was also the Pope's nephew. As part of this effort, he sent David with the head of Goliath to Borghese as a gift and a plea for forgiveness. In the summer of 1610, Caravaggio received news that his pardon might be granted. He then set off by boat to Rome, bringing along 3 paintings with him. However, something went wrong. On July 28, 1610, a private newsletter from Rome reported that Caravaggio had died. Some believe that when Caravaggio arrived at the port of Palu, he was mistakenly arrested. After he was released, he traveled in foot or horseback under the hot sun to Porto Ercole. By the time he made it to his destination, he was extremely ill and died soon after from fever and heat stroke. Caravaggio was buried in Porto Ercole, but then his remains were later moved to St. Erasmus Cemetery. In 2010, archaeologists conducted investigations and they found some of the remains that might belong to Caravaggio. They found that Caravaggio's remains contained unusually high levels of lead, suggesting that he might have died from lead poisoning. This discovery also led people to believe that chronic lead exposure from his paints may have contributed to his violent behavior and unpredictable temper, because lead poisoning is known to affect brain function and mood. So, what do you think about Caravaggio now after learning about his life story? Whether you see him as a hero or rebel, one thing's for sure is that his legacy still shakes the art world today.